WADR, promoting dialogue.
Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Nigeria's Court of Petitions adjourns hearing on election challenges against Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Reactions continue to trail the 6-month suspended prison sentence of Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko. Liberia's National Electoral Commission threatens punitive measures against politicians violating the pre-campaigning elections law.
To this effect, the NEC mandates that as of midnight on 15 May 2023, all would-be aspirants must take down or remove their billboards, posters from where they are situated.
An estimated 16.5 million under 5 children from the Sahelian state are malnourished, says the World Bank. Stay with us for details of these stories and more coming up shortly.
Here is Tofik Abdulnasir with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us. We begin the bulletin in Nigeria, where the Presidential Court of Petitions in Abuja is hearing 3 petitions challenging the election of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, candidate of the Congress of Progressive Party. The Labour Party candidate, Peter Obi, is asking the court to overturn Tinubu's victory due to fraud charges and other irregularities during the presidential election in February. The court has postponed further proceedings until Wednesday and has set the same date for a second petition filed by the People's Action Party. Atiku Abubakar, the PDP candidate who finished second in the presidential election, has requested the court to allow live streaming of the daily proceedings relating to his petition. The Action Alliance has withdrawn its claim against Tinubu without giving an explanation. In Senegal, reactions continue to trail Ousmane Sonko's 6-month suspended prison sentence by a Dakar court. The verdict handed down Monday also requires the opposition leader to pay a 200 million CFA francs fine in the case of defamation filed against him by the country's Minister of Tourism, Mamin Bamiyang. Considered a strong presidential hopeful in the February 2024 polls, analysts say Sonko's political ambition is almost blurred with the myriad of cases in the coming days, with one dating back to 2 years ago. Before him, some opposition politicians have appeared before the court over cases that would later impede their political progression. In the wake of this, the question asked by many is whether Sonko is caught in a legal web that may negatively affect his career. Abdoulaye Hassan engages Mamadou Chor, a Senegalese political analyst, in this brief chat about the development.
When the verdict came out, the first analysis done by most people, they said that Ousmane Sonko, it won't be possible for him to run for 2024. And what is funny, in the verdict, never the judge has said in the verdict that Ousmane Sonko is not eligible for next presidential election. So people are just bringing in big change which happened in the electoral code, specifically with what we call the article L29 and L30, or which, what happened to Khalifa Sall during the last presidential election in 2019. They said that the same may happen to Ousmane Sonko, but there is another trial waiting for him at the Supreme Court. That would be the last chance for him.
At this point, is it fair to say Ousmane Sonko is already feeling the weight of the legal battle?
Yeah, he considered that the justice system is corrected for him. And what is left for him is a political battle. He said it clearly in his last declaration.
Macky Sall did ask for a sort of political dialogue with all political groups. Ousmane Sonko had said he wouldn't go, but do you think overall this verdict will impact that political discussion?
Yeah, even some people think that maybe the verdict can change Ousmane Sonko's mind. And it's a way for Macky Sall to lure Ousmane Sonko into this dialogue. Nobody knows. Time will tell. But, if politically speaking, Ousmane Sonko cannot fight back to try to avoid the trap he is in, he'll be somehow maybe compelled to go to the dialogue and try to find a solution for his candidacy next year.
Mamadou Chor is a political analyst. The National Elections Commission of Liberia has given an ultimatum to all aspirants involved in pre-campaigning to take down or remove all their billboards, posters, banners, and jingles, among others, or risk punitive actions in line with the elections law. The ultimatum comes amid pre-campaigning activities by several aspirants under the cover of awareness about the ongoing voter registration exercise. WADR's Darlington Popper in Monrovia reports.
Almost everywhere across the country is flooded with flyers and billboards showing messages of several aspirants and action the electoral empire described as pre-campaigning activities, hence the ultimatum. Chairperson of the Commission, Deviata Branlasana, informs that if by May 15, aspirants refuse to take down these messages, they will be dealt with in line with the election laws of the country.
All would-be aspirants involved in pre-campaigning must desist to avoid future embarrassment. To this effect, the NEC mandates that as of midnight on 15 May 2023, all would-be aspirants must take down or remove their billboards, posters, banners, jingles, dramas, utterances, and other forms of promotional paraphernalia from where they are situated. Failure to comply with this mandate will lead to consequences for the candidate nomination process.
Meanwhile, Kula Fofana, an official of the main opposition Unity Party, accuses the commission of failing to act because the ruling government was reportedly the first offender.
If the government is seen as violating the electoral rules or other institutions, and you did not, or you are not taking any stance, for example, the ruling establishment had a rally, they painted billboard all across the country up to today as we speak. Since the event in, I think it was February or so, those billboards are still in the street. Those are elements of pre-campaigning, but nothing has been done. It's important for us to have institution and duty bearers ensure that they follow the rules and punish those who are found to be engaging in electoral violence or episodes of electoral violence.
The Commission has vowed to enforce the 2023 revised and published guideline on campaigning activities to ensure law and order. Reporting for Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Don't forget, we are streaming live on Facebook at West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. The United Nations is urging Mali to immediately adopt legislation to criminalize slavery in the country. Two independent UN experts said on Monday that slavery by descent and the resulting violence perpetrated by supposed masters against people born into slavery persist in the country. Their findings indicate that slavery by descent is widespread in the central and northern regions of the country, notably in Timbuktu, Gao, and Kidal. Ogeobi Erika brings us more details in this report.
Tomoya Obokata, the Special Rapporteur on Contemporary Forms of Slavery, and Alioune Tine, an independent expert on the situation of human rights in Mali, made some critical assertions. The experts say this harmful practice would result in the displacement of hundreds of people and entire communities who have no hope of returning to their communities of origin for fear of being attacked. Obokata and Tine declared that nothing justifies slavery and its continuous support in the 21st century contradicts the commitment of the Malian authorities to respect, protect, and implement human rights for all. At least 800,000 people are considered to have been born into slavery, while 200,000 others live under the direct control of their masters. But the National Human Rights Commission of Mali, CNDH, says there is no data on the number of victims of slavery by descent in the country. The experts acknowledged the significant efforts made by the Malian authorities to end impunity in cases of slavery by descent, including the conviction of several people for such crimes. The special session took place at the Assize Court of Case from February 27 to March 17, 2023. The UN experts who, however, insist on specific law criminalizing slavery said such would make it easier to prosecute those responsible and increase the protection of victims. According to independent UN experts, individuals or communities who resist slavery are often subject to physical or social isolation and movement restrictions by their masters.
Ogilvy Erica filed that report. A new report says nearly 30 million people across the world, and specifically in Africa, need emergency food aid amid the rising food prices. The report, which is an inventory of food security released by the World Bank Monday, says the situation is critical in two regions of the continent. As Francis Boniface reports, West and Central Africa are the regions hard hit.
The World Bank report on food security published Monday describes the situation in West and Central Africa as particularly critical. According to latest estimates from the Food Crisis Prevention Network referenced by the Global Financial Institution, 29.5 million people need emergency food aid. A cumulative count of 16.5 million children under the age of 5 from Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, and Niger suffer from acute malnutrition, making the Sahel the most affected. The report similarly notes that food security is decreasing in the north of Togo and Benin, an area where security is now more threatened. Concerned by the contributing factors, the World Bank points to violence and insecurity, climate change, as well as high inflation, among others. In West Africa, the prices of the main basic cereals are again, according to the World Bank, 25% to 40% higher than the average for the past 5 years. This inflation is by large attributed to the increasing cost of fuel, fertilizer, and basic products in the house, as households are finding it increasingly difficult to access enough nutritious food. The financial institution points to persistent trade obstacles, high transport costs, the repercussions of the war in Ukraine, and the depreciation of the currency.
Francis Boniface filed that report. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Nigeria's Court of Petitions adjourns hearing on election challenges against Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Reactions continue to trail the 6-month suspended prison sentence of Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko. Liberia's National Electoral Commission threatens punitive measures against politicians violating the pre-campaigning elections law. An estimated 16.5 million under 5 children from the Sahelian state are malnourished, says the World Bank. Still ahead is the guest interview and sports. Stay tuned.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
The Nigerian capital, Niamey, is hosting the 15th meeting of the Regional Committee for Disaster Management in West Africa. Capacity building of the body is also on the agenda of the conference that began on Monday. The participants will discuss synergies in emergency response in the West African sub-region during this meeting. Abdullah Hassan has more in this report by our Niamey correspondent Murtala Zubairu.
The 15th meeting of the Regional Committee for Disaster Management in West Africa is holding in Niamey, the Nigerian capital. This time, however, representatives from ECOWAS and the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs (OCHA) are in attendance. The conference aims at mutualizing efforts in terms of emergency preparedness and response. For the ECOWAS resident representative in Niger, Guillaume Indri, it is important to re-strategize on emergency and disaster preparedness.
He says, The subject of disaster management in West Africa that brings us together on this day is not the easiest to approach from an emotional point of view. Indeed, in front of such a dramatic subject, when we look at its humanitarian and material consequences, we can only be seized with this desire to act, to secure, to care, to console all these people facing the distress and chaos that sows in nature after this passage.
For his part, Nigeria's Minister of Interior, Amadou Adamu Sule, invited participants to be more objective in their submissions given the humanitarian context of the region. During the next 4 days, participants are expected to table relevant solutions to help ECOWAS member countries face disasters and promote greater resilience of the populations. The meeting, which comes as the rainy season sets in some countries such as Nigeria, Benin, Togo and Ghana, recalls the destruction of properties and loss of lives due to floods in 2022.
That was a report by WADR's Niamey correspondent Murtala Zubairu and voiced in our studios by Abdullahi Hassan. We head to Côte d'Ivoire, where the 11th African Land Forces Summit began on Monday. The summit, which is being attended by 36 African countries, the United States, and some European nations, is focused on addressing security challenges through civil-military partnership. The aim of the meeting is to discuss security challenges in Africa and develop complementary and collaborative solutions to shared security challenges. Ivorian Minister of Defense Tene Brahima Ouattara emphasized the need for states to adopt a global and multilateral approach to the fight against insecurity. The conference agenda includes discussions, working committee sessions, and a visit to the International Academy for the Fight Against Terrorism in Jacksonville today.
Politics.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Darlington Popper in Monrovia joins us now with the major headlines from the Liberian dailies.
Yes, indeed. It is another day for another edition of Press Review, this time around from Liberia. And for today's edition, we have with us 3 newspapers from Liberia. They are the Front Page Africa newspaper, the Hot Pepper newspaper, and the New Liberia newspaper. We start off with the Front Page Africa newspaper. Dismiss pre-trial cases. Who is saying this? The newly commissioned judge of Criminal Court D at the Temple of Justice, Councillor Menimata Jabba Salif, has vowed to release all those behind bars for armed robbery if the government of Liberia fails to proceed with the prosecution. We see the photograph of this judge on the front page of the Front Page Africa newspapers. Stay with the Front Page Africa newspaper. Addressing corruption in Liberia, U.S. Ambassador McCarthy claims a big award. We see the photograph of United States Ambassador to Liberia, Makia McCarthy. Gonglo calls for sanctions. And we see the photograph of Councillor Tewanse Gonglo, an aspirant for the presidency. He didn't fight in Liberia. Ex-RUF commander denies Jibril massacre fought in Liberia's war. From the Front Page Africa newspaper, the Hot Pepper newspaper is next. MCC steps up climate crisis mitigation efforts to protect coastal counties. Begins planting 2,000 trees across Monrovia. And we leave it right there. We see the mayor of Monrovia, Jefferson Koji, is planting the tree here. And on the back page of the Hot Pepper newspaper, Draft National Urban Policy for Liberia launch. And the New Liberia newspaper is now our last stop for today's edition of Press Review. Printed with the nation's color, red, white and blue, the New Liberia newspaper is published by the Ministry of Information, Cultural Affairs and Tourism. With the bold banner headline on the front page of the New Liberia newspaper, President Weah congratulates Great Britain, and we see the photograph of the King here and President George Weah on this one. Government proposes legislation to differentiate between child labor and adult work. On the back page of the New Liberia newspaper quickly. Sweden rallies international support at UNHQ to address NEC's funding gaps. That's the National Elections Commission of Liberia. We will try to get a gist of this story. Her Excellency Ambassador Annie Karin from Storm, permanent representative of Sweden to the United Nations and chair of the Liberian Confederation Peacebuilding Commission, has stressed the need to urgently address the funding gap of $25.5 million United States dollars to ensure the successful conduct of the presidential and legislative elections in October. With that, we conclude today's edition of Press Review. But before we go, these are the three newspapers we actually followed on today's edition. We followed the Front Page Africa newspaper, the Hot Pepper newspaper, and the New Liberia newspaper was our last stop. On that note, thank you so much for following, and bye-bye.
Darlington Popper there with the major headlines from the Liberian dailies.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
As the 2023 general elections in Liberia draws closer, the National Electoral Umpire has given an ultimatum to all presidential and parliamentary aspirants involved in pre-campaigning to take down or remove all their billboards, posters, banners and jingles, among others, or risk punitive actions in line with the elections law. The ultimatum comes amid pre-campaigning activities by several aspirants under the cover of awareness about the ongoing voter registration exercise. This afternoon, we will be looking at the effect of these measures taken by the Commission on the political party candidates, how the justice system is responding to the development and the Commission's lack of funding. Joining us now is Louis G. Brown, who leads the Alexander Cummins team.
Well, look, it's just symbolic. Probably we should see the National Election Commission is appearing to many Liberians rather disappointingly to be a toothless bulldog. It's just barking. It knows exactly who's doing this. The government is. It is not doing anything to stop the president and the government from doing what it is doing. That's an open violation of the law. But beyond that, there are other challenges with the elections. The commission itself is not funded by the government. We've been informed about $25.5 million shortfall in the Electoral Commission's budget, and that's troubling. There's issues with trucking of voters. There's issue with breakdown of machines in the field, poor preparation, inadequate preparation, leading to what can be called voter apathy and low registration of Liberians. This is truly troubling and disturbing at this time.
Right. You made some allegations which are quite serious ones, that the Electoral Commission is a toothless bulldog and violating the laws. Why is the Electoral Commission violating the laws? Because according to the electoral laws, political parties are not supposed to begin with your campaign. So how are they the ones violating the laws, if not the political parties?
No, by being a toothless bulldog, it means they are supposed to be refereeing this matter. They are not calling out. They are making broad general claims when they know the president, for instance, led security personnel We saw people not wearing uniforms with weapons being displayed in public at the president's rally, intimidating Liberians. We've seen opposition figures being harassed and having stone thrown at them and their areas being disturbed. We've seen the president lining the city and other places with his posters and campaign banners and what have you. And they're just broadly speaking, oh, you cannot do this. They have not as yet brought this president to book anyway. So that's why we see them as toothless bulldog.
So talk about they are just barking and they cannot bite. Have you commenced with your campaign? And do you think it would affect you? That is, if you have commenced.
No, we want to change this country. So we're trying to do the best we can. Even where it doesn't appear to be fair, we're trying to do the best we can to stay within the ambit of the law. We're seeing aspirants and other people, just trucking Liberians, which is also a violation of the law. We've seen a violation in the registration of individuals, of Liberian voters, where their constituencies should be displayed on the face of their voter registration card. This is not being done, and the Election Commission is itself breaking its own laws.
Right. So if you think the Electoral Commission is violating the Constitution, why are you not going to court to seek redress?
Exactly. One would think that this will be where we should end up with these matters. And don't be surprised when I tell you that we actually went to court, challenged the unconstitutional behavior of the National Election Commission itself to begin to conduct voter registration in the absence of the demarcation of constituencies or establishing threshold immediately after the conduct of a census. The Supreme Court handed down an opinion that said, yes, the Constitution authorizes, in fact, mandates the National Elections Commission to demarcate constituencies, but that is not self-executing in their words. And they suggest that the National Election Commission can proceed as they are doing, which is in utter and total disregard to the Constitution, because the legislative bodies, I think we have a two-tier legislature. One is the upper house, we call the Senate. The other is the lower house, we call the House of Representatives. 73 members of the House of Representatives, all of them are up for election. 15 of the Senate up for election. And the court is saying these politicians, by not doing their side of the constitutional mandate, the NEC is excused to not do its mandate as well. This is a travesty. Our elections is in trouble. Voters are being registered into places where they don't know, based on the face of the voter registration card, where they will vote.
Louis G. Brown is leader of the Alexander Cummins team. And now in sports, former Ivorian international football star Yaya Toure has publicly denounced his former agent Dimitri Seluk for making comments about an alleged African curse that was supposedly preventing Manchester City and Pep Guardiola from winning the Champions League. Seluk had recently been quoted in the media suggesting that Toure had lifted the curse, thereby enabling City to win the competition. However, Toure has disavowed Seluk's comments and criticized him for perpetrating harmful stereotypes about African culture. Taking to Twitter, Toure stated that he did not wish to be associated with such nonsense and lazy stereotypes about so-called African curses. Toure played a crucial role for Manchester City from 2010 to 2018, helping the club secure their first three Premier League titles. In the 2013-2014 season, he was named the club's player of the season, further cementing his status as one of the most outstanding midfielders of his era. And that's it for sports. We have come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to our listeners in the Gambia via Hot 104.3 FM, and in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County, and in Ghana on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi. Christian Mukidi has been on the console, and Mustafa Sek has been streaming live on Facebook. Do interact with us via social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am Tofik Abdulnasir. Good afternoon.